the COVID shutdowns and lockdowns. And in my opinion, I think it would be so incredible if you and I could have a discussion and that would impact the whole post-secondary system. But I think it's about to crumble because it can't be sustained when it can't charge people to show up. Have you put any
Yeah.
thought into what's going on currently? I mean, we're now recording this in September, and colleges, I think I read, where 41% are not doing fall sports. What is that
Right.
going to do for those systems and all the money that goes in there? Any thoughts
Right.
on that?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. But my book came out in November of last year, and I've obviously been pushing on it. But then COVID hit, and I thought, well, I'm going to get help from visibility on my book, because people who have been living in denial are finally seeing, uh-oh, this is true. and what I'm paying for is not, I'm not getting a return on my investment. So what the heck am I going to do where I can get a return on my investment? So, yeah, it's rough. The business systems that we've set up, that even schools have set up, they have not had to justify their existence in a long time. And now maybe they have to. People still want the good story though. Man, people are still going to fight to go to Harvard. People are still going to fight to go to the Ivy Leagues, and the Ivy Leagues are still going to charge, $7,000 an internet class to have that Princeton model. And, the thing is, I look in LA and I look at stereotypically the writers that get jobs in LA. And if you're not a star, you're a writer on a show, you came from an Ivy League, because they put a lot of money into marketing. They put a lot of money into that brand, and that brand means legitimacy to everyone. So ultimately, I used to look at when I was looking at grad school, I looked at Yale and I looked at their program and I thought, that's not what I want. However, that Yale stamp always helps to people that don't know, because they put a lot of cash into that brand, So who knows? Who knows if they're going to pull out their good story? They're going to change it. I was telling my stepdaughter, take a year off. She just hit 4-year college. She was just finished 2-year college. And I said, take a year off, because these instructors, it took me a year to build an online course without grading. And now these instructors are having to build online courses with grading in 4 months. University of Phoenix has built their whole system on online courses. And my ex-wife took that, and I got to see what that's like. That's different than a brick and mortar. That's a lot of effort, and it's a lot of change, and it's a lot of systems. And now you're asking brick and mortars, to treat teachers in brick and mortars, to do that in 3 or 4 months and make it work. You're kidding. I mean, it's just no way. So yeah, we're going to see. But my stepdaughter said, nah, I'll do it, because she wants that good story. She's been told her whole life, got to go to college, got to go to college, got to go to college. And she doesn't know what to do if she's not going to college. That's the other scary thing, where we have not trained our students, our children, to stand on their own 2 feet. We're waiting for them to pass these markers, and those markers mean something. Well, what do they mean? What do they mean to themselves? What's that? Where's that training come from?
Yeah, and it's like something that we talk about here is it how we define success. And what you seem to be doing is I'll use my words. It's almost like, from reading the book, you are begging people to
Sure.
define success differently.
Yeah.
So the title of the book, A Degree in Homelessness, how did that come about? And maybe just give us a little backstory on the book.
Sure.
I've gone through, I've got some highlights. Maybe I'll ask some things. And then, just as a little bit of a tease to the listener, I am going to later talk about your actual homeless video you did, which I think has some cool implications. I wasn't able to see it, but I want to ask about it.
Sure.
But first, let's talk about A Degree in Homelessness, the book. Where did the name come from? And give us a little bit of the backstory of that.
Yeah. So I started trying to build my own thing, my own empire, right? After 2008 housing crisis, when I made that documentary, because my bank was trying to kick me out of the house, and I thought, oh, I've done everything right and I'm going to become homeless. Oh, my idea of who homeless people are must be not right. And so obviously that's a huge passion of mine, and delving into who is homeless, how they get there, how you can get out of it, how we can make support sustainable. That's been for 10 years. That's just what I've been doing. And then when I started learning business on my own and figured out I need to tell this to students, kind of the teaching side of it, and also looking for another interested market into what I would be doing, because I spent 11 years teaching. I would not like to walk away from teaching. I enjoy teaching. How can I continue to teach in possibly a book form or speaking form? So I wrote the book, and I thought, well, I'm known for homeless stuff, and it helps keeping that brand, and it helps to keep me focused in that I am into growing people out of poverty or growing people into success. So that fits in line, and I'm looking for a title. And I thought, well, why don't I just challenge my readers? Why don't I just say, yeah, you're going to get a degree in being homeless, you know? I mean, and that's just my first editor said, you're going to scare your audience away. You have to change that title.
It
I
does
said,
sound
no,
harsh. It does sound kind
no,
of harsh. So you held
it
your ground.
is. But man, someone's got to smack them in the face. They're just in denial, and that's fine. But I've seen what denial looks like, and it's sleeping in your car, and it's living in poverty, and it's not knowing how, waiting for someone to give you worth as a human being. I don't want to live like that. I don't want anybody to live like that. And our system is set up for someone else to tell you how good you are. No. Don't wait. Because if no one tells you how good you are, if you're not one of the lucky or fortunate or just whatever it is that gets you a job, a stable job, and your life doesn't go well, then you've got nothing to hang your hat on. And capitalism, one of my sayings, capitalism doesn't care about you. You know, you'll go down. If you're waiting for someone and someone's not there, you're done. So that was kind of where I came up with it.
I did see, this is actually jumping ahead. I wrote down a quote that you had related to your Why Homeless, I think, video, and was the solution to homelessness has to embrace capitalism.
Yeah.
And I wrote that down to bring it up. This might be a good time because there's all kind of things going through my head right now, because you are really, really talking about something that I will term personal responsibility.
Yeah.
It's kind of where you're telling everyone they need to be responsible for their own success, whatever that path is.
Yeah.
And you know what? That is not really popular in our current culture. And why is that? Now, you actually stood up in front of a number of college students. So give us some insight. What's going on?
So you're a business person. You know that the only way you can make money starts and ends with you. And you know that. And you understand what your market is. You understand how to show the value you have to people that may be interested in you. And you know how to grow that and sustain that. We have, because everyone wants the good story, other business people have said, I'll take care of you. I'll do that for you. And we let them. And that's good business on their part. You figure out the academics. Yeah, we'll totally do whatever you need. Or, Starbucks, we will give you joy in a coffee cup. I have a Starbucks cup right here. They have infiltrated the world, right? That's good business. That's capitalism. But we have to know when they're selling us a good story because they need their business to prosper, and when we're getting a good story to make us save ourselves. Because the other thing I say is no one cares about you more than you do. And that's just, you have to be responsible. But really savvy business people have found a way to make money by telling people that they are not responsible for themselves. And that's it. And we have to just call them on it and say, I get it. I know. I hate to pick on Amazon because I love the idea. I think Jeff Bezos is, to watch him be, the golden boy, or they made fun of him in the late 90s. Then he became the golden boy. And then all of a sudden now he's a pariah because he doesn't pay taxes. But those same people hate on him for successfully delivering whatever they want to their house, right? He figured that out. But at the same time, now I'm going to say, okay, Jeff Bezos, my corner store is hurting. So I am going to get off my lazy butt and I'm going to take my COVID precautions and I'm going to go help my local community. Because as much as I love you, Jeff Bezos, and as much as I admire the empire that you've built and the ability that you have given for us to sustain in some way through this pandemic with more safety, I have to take care of myself and my community now. And I think that's, it falls back. The other thing about homelessness is my solution, not only embracing capitalism, but it's family and community, because the downfall of what has given us so many homeless people is the downfall of family and community. That's the socialism we have in this country. That's the only socialism we have in this country. And we have walked away from it. We've said, you know what, when you're 18, you're on your own. Or I'm going to have this kid, but I'm not going to be responsible for this kid, or whatever it is. I fight with you, therefore I disown you. Or I will see the bum on the corner of my street and ask the police officer to do something about it, instead of me going to that person and finding out how I can help that person in my community succeed. And so what we've done is we've just shuffled it off. And savvy business people here in LA, they put in a measure. So we gained all of this money in this governmental pot for homeless sheltering. And none of it went to actual shelters to shelter the homeless. It all went into development costs. It all went into permitting. It all went into PR. It all went into giving money to people that already had homes. And yeah, they need jobs and we should keep them from going homeless too. But that money was to get people off the street, So yeah. The direct action thing, the community responsibility, the family, I'm constantly talking about that. And I think you do the same. You come at it from your angle. I come at it from my angle. And at some point, somebody's got to start listening, because from my view, living in Los Angeles, we have third world problems in a first world country. Why? Why?
We shouldn't. Yeah, I agree. But I want to go back. There's one thing that still, it kind of nags at me. And I think you might have some insight before we move to that big issue, which is homeless. And I want to really find out. I want to find out what inspired you to do the documentary and all that you did.
Sure.
But before that, you were a professor.
Yeah.
And you had college students that came in. How long were you a professor? How many years?
11 years.
11 years. Okay. So you had, I'm guessing, 18 to 20 something year olds come in front of you. And one of the things that I could argue, I could flip it around to the collegiate side and say, all they're doing is providing what's being demanded by the customer.
Absolutely.
I don't think that's entirely correct, but I almost feel as if some of these students that are coming in, maybe a large percentage, are really just begging to have everything somewhat handed to them, maybe simple, maybe easy. And this is my negative mindset going here, is that when you write a book like you wrote, it's almost like just preaching to the small number of people, because most people want the easy way out.
Yeah.
Am I right or wrong? You saw all these folks, and if so, why is it that that's what they desire when they come into your classes in these colleges?
Well, I think it's a human desire to you run a business as well. what do you answer? You answer a starving crowd. You give them, you make whatever your product is so easy for them to purchase that there's no barriers, right? You're knocking down barriers to try and make your sales, right? And so I think that always saying, yeah, I'll deliver that food to you is no business says, it's going to be hard work, that you'll never make any sales. You know what I mean? So I think as human beings, we already gravitate towards the easiest solution possible, the less friction. I started teaching. Well, when I started teaching, we were getting the kids that had gone through elementary, the No Child Left Behind years, where it was not teaching them to think for themselves. It was teaching them to pass a test. So you would give them the test, you would tell them the answers, they would pass the test, and then that meant they could go to the next. I had a student say, I don't want to think for myself. I want you to tell me what to do. And I said, okay, we have to break that training. And because of that, I was a very popular / very unpopular professor, because I would say, my job apparently now is to get you to think for yourself. I'm not even going to tell you the questions. You have to come up with the questions. What? It was this mind flip. So I think that every generation complains about the youth, right? So I think it's three things. It's just them being young and not knowing what they want. They're still needing guidance. They're constantly in a fight with, they've got hormones and boys and girls and school and mom and dad, and they've got all this other stuff coming in on them. They don't know what the right answer is. And it's this No Child Left Behind stuff that we sent children into the world of, we will tell you how to succeed. And then I think it's this innate human need to make it as simple as possible and make it as easy as possible. And there are very few, we are all built with our own gifts and talents. And some of us can see through that and decide that work is what we want and working hard is what we want. And those people will succeed almost no matter what. There's an inspirational speaker, David Goggins. He went through Navy SEAL something like 4 times. And he's one of these guys who's like, life is hard. If life is not hard, you're not doing it right. You know what I mean? Where it's like, he loves that friction. He finds inspiration in that friction. And that's a type of personality. That's not necessarily how all people are. And at the same time, I don't know that I'm 46. So these young students would be, if I had kids, they would be my kids. I don't think we did a good job challenging them. I think we did an awful job. We coddled them. We did not inspire them. I used to tell my stepson, you have to go hang out with the kids by the dumpster for a while so you know what to do. He's like, no. I said, get out with the kids by the dumpster. You got to figure this out, And I grew up in the 70s and 80s where we were still riding our bikes on our own. We didn't have to worry about, our parents weren't worried about people abducting us, even though people got abducted. Our parents weren't worried about us needing to wear a helmet because, well, if you got hurt, that's your own fault. They were teaching personal responsibility. They were teaching a harder life. And I think that generationally, because we've been supposed to be giving an easier life to our next generation, we trained a whole bunch of people that are not ready. They just don't know. They don't know how a car works at all, even though they drive a car. Like what? They can't even see how it works because now we've engineered it to a point. It's so fine-tuned that you can't work on it. At least I could work on my 87 Toyota pickup that I inherited from my father. I could see the engine. I could see the carburetor. I could see how everything worked, and my dad would make me work on it. Now, good luck. So I think that, yeah, we've engineered ourselves into this kind of
Yeah.
wussyhood, right? Where
What?
we just,
Yeah, yeah. We're soft. We hate to use terms, the snowflake and bubble wrapped and all that. But I do think there's this desire as parents for each generation for it to get, for our children to have it a little bit better. And I think what we're seeing is we're seeing that multiplied or even exponentially grown, and it's just kind of building. What part of the country, where'd you grow up? Where was your
uh,
formative years?
all California all the time, pretty much.
Oh,
So I
really?
grew up in Sacramento, and I was there until I was 24. And then I moved to Reno, Nevada was my first job outside of college, and then went to graduate school in Kansas City, and then spent some time on the East Coast and spent some time in Las Vegas, and then came back to California, Southern California this time though.
The reason is that the way you spoke, you sounded like, and you hate to use these terms, but you sounded like someone who had a lot of middle America type values. You know, when you hear that
Sure.
hard work, pull yourself up, do that type. And again, that's kind of generalizing, but have you ever had anybody else tell you that, or?
Yeah, well, my grandfather was a huge influence on my life, and he came from Southern Wisconsin, and
Mhm.
he was an entrepreneur, but he was one of the guys. My parents told this story about him when he was maybe 10 or 11. He needed glasses, and his parents were so poor that they couldn't afford glasses. So my 11-year-old grandfather went to the optometrist and made a deal at 11, said, look, you give me the glasses now and I'll pay this stuff off, but I can't see. At 11, what 11-year-old is going to go to an optometrist? So I grew up with that as an ideal. You know, my father always said he was helping a friend of his rewire his car. And my dad told me the story, and he said, I told my friend, you know, you're going to have to make 3 times as much as I will to have half as much as I will, because you have no idea how any of this works. And that just impressed on me as well, where, yeah, life is supposed to be hard. It's that David Goggins, like, if it's not hurting, you're not doing it right. And then I did get in a motorcycle accident. I broke my leg and hip, and I never liked exercise. But then, and I never really liked pain too much, but now I understand pain is a reminder that you're alive. So pain is good, you know. But how many people, you have to be either that personality or you have to have these life experiences to really want that and look at life as an adventure. Otherwise, you're rewarded to be afraid of everything, because if you're afraid of everything, someone has the answer to make you not afraid, right? Someone can build a little capsule for you that you just pay them some money. Someone can give you a mask, you just pay them some money. Someone can give you a shot, you just pay them some money. Someone can, you know, build a better car with more airbags, you just give them some money. You know, I mean, it's just,
And you're just protected. And some people don't even think that the money should change hands. They just think that all should be taken care of on
right.
their own. Now, one thing that's interesting, you kind of brought up some of the current items going on. '08 became very uncomfortable for us because we had successful companies that were all in real estate,
Mm.
and we were literally homeless a few years later, and have rebounded from that. But to me, the times that we're currently in look like they could make a lot of people uncomfortable, and they're going to have to meet some of that pain or uncomfortableness head on. What are your thoughts with just all this going on right now in
Yeah.
fall of 2020?
So I remember 2008 very well, because it was my opportunity to look behind the curtain. It was not Oz like I'd been told. It was my opportunity
Yeah.
to first think, oh, this is all a rig. And then we've been told a lie. And people were going homeless. You know, you owned real estate, you know, your real estate was worth nothing. It went from a lot to nothing. I bought a house in 2006 for $395,000. And in 2012, it was valued at $180,000. So, and in Riverside, California, which is not prime real estate in California. It's the Inland Empire, it's deserts, I mean, no slamming Riverside. It's a great city. It's a great city, but it's not Malibu, right? And
Yeah.
so you know, I think that that was this opening where I was seeing, and that's when I did my documentary. So I saw all these people just falling down, people that weren't supposed to fall down, falling down, people that had bought into the story of Oz, educated people. And I thought, uh-oh, this is when the revolution happens. And I remember being in a Harbor Freight, of all places. It's a hardware store.
Tools and stuff like that.
Tools,
Yeah, yeah.
and they sold a machete for $6. And I thought, uh-oh, machetes are $6. And these educated people that are supposed to have these lives don't have these lives. It's on. Like, I'm waiting for the revolution. Well, it didn't come. People wanted the good story. People wanted their stability. People wanted, and they waited and they waited. And if you remember, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, it was like growing, brutal, little better, push. Okay. And by 2012, we were back to hardcore capitalism. It's like, yeah, we made it, and we're just going crazy again, and we're buying stuff, and real estate prices are going nuts, and people are buying more at Starbucks. I used to spend like $20 a day at Starbucks. What am I doing? And I went through 08, but by 12, I was just so excited that I didn't have that anymore. Right. So part of me thinks, oh, maybe this is the revolution, but to the point it didn't happen. And I was so let down on my prediction to the point where I started looking into revolutions and why they kick off. And really, it's food, right? Historically, if you can't feed your people, that's when people really have nothing to lose and they will overtake. So I think FDR was really smart, and all of those farm subsidies, we will never run out of food. The system is set up that people will never starve the way that people do in African countries, for example. So I think the people in power don't have to worry about the revolution, Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe this is it, and maybe some things will change, but I have a feeling because people love their stability. They grew up with it. I always say, is it that bad? Because there's no man that's chasing you with a machete right now. So we got it pretty good in comparison, and I think people as much as they are irate right now, I don't think they're going to do anything. I just don't. And I think that if academia can figure out how to change their good story so people can actually allow themselves to buy into it again, we'll buy into it. I mean, personally, I wish we could take more personal responsibility. I wish we could bring back our families and communities. I'm working towards it. I'm trying to make that happen. I don't know that people want it.
I'm not sure that they do either. And, you brought up the food thing. I just did a cross-country drive, or almost cross-country, from Colorado back to Georgia. And let me tell you, there's corn everywhere. there's a lot of corn out there. If nothing else, people can eat some derivative of corn.
Yeah.
It's everywhere out there. So I do. That's interesting, because I've kind of had similar thoughts. I think you and I are down the same path. I've used the term reset since, early part of 2020, when things started happening and we start seeing lockdowns. And I know that this is going to have a ripple effect through the economy that I think is going to be worse than 08, because we can't shut this economy down, and it's still partially shut down. We have to function off 105% productivity month after month. It's got to be growth, and we just aren't seeing that. So I agree with you. So this kind of led you into doing some studies and research about the homeless. And I was doing some research late yesterday, and I didn't really get to check this out. So what I'd love for you to do is educate me and the listener on what you did. You've got a documentary, I believe it's on Amazon, and some other things. So tell us what it is, and then I'm going to dig in and ask a few more questions about it, because I think it's relevant And I agree with
Sure.
you. It would be awesome if we could move the needle, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, I think you and I are people that will push to always try and move the needle. And if we can get it moving a little, and if you can just save one person, right? Well, honestly,
Yeah.
one is better than none. So yeah, let's do it. uh, yeah. So the documentary was the first big thing I did. It's called Why Homeless. It's on Amazon Prime, and it's about homelessness across the United States. And it was on the back of the housing crisis, so in the back of 2008. And I went around and I interviewed homeless people and homeless service providers and asked them what is happening, who goes homeless and why, how is it, how can people grow out of that and become not homeless, and what do you want to share with the housed community? And a lot of it comes down to judgments. You know, I had a judgment that homeless people were this, mainly drug addicts and mentally ill. And drug addicts and mental illness comprise a component, but it's definitely not all. And addiction and mental illness is also a sliding scale. So are you talking anxiety, mental illness? Are you talking smoking pot, drug addiction? Are you talking full-blown heroin, can't stand up straight? And are you talking schizophrenic, hitting people with hammers? You know, I mean, it's really a broad spectrum. And in the middle of that, you have people that got sick, that got kicked out of that lost a roommate, that lost their job, that are running away from an abusive relationship, that whatever happens, that got out of the military and can't cope with, they just spent 3 years killing people. And now what? Now they're in a desk job in Ohio and they freak out. Whatever, they can't cope. So what do we do? What do we do with that? And so all those people, I always said that the population of homeless represents the population of the housed. So as many diverse people as we have in homes, we have that diversity out of our homes. And what are we going to do? And the big thing for me was the family and community, because social services can't keep up. So it's really taking care of people around you, and that we can get a handle on some of it. So yeah, that was the documentary. And then I wrote a book, because people would see the documentary and they would say, well, what about, and then they had all these, again, it was like down to judgmental questions. Well, who are these homeless people, and why can't they just mow lawns? My uncle said that. Why can't he just get a lawnmower and mow a
Just
lawn?
get a
I said,
job.
okay.
If they would just get a
Yeah,
job,
so
then everything would be okay, right?
yeah. So that book really delves into these difficult questions about how do we handle this? Who are these people? And really, it's also an opportunity for you to reflect on your own thoughts and feelings about who you think these people are and what is keeping them there. So there's that. And then I started doing YouTube series after that. So one of the things when I moved to LA, there are so many resources in LA, so many resources to better yourselves. One of them is public speaking, where you get to look how to articulate. And I thought, not only have I learned so much from the homeless, but if I challenge the homeless to tell me an inspirational story, that would be amazing for them. Not only do I say hi and remind them that they're human, but I actually say, you have something to give the world. Please inspire us. And so I did this YouTube series called Skid Row Speakers, where I went around and I got they're short inspirational stories from different homeless people. What else have I done homeless? So I started writing a blog where I developed this manifesto where I thought, okay, if I had all the resources at my control, this is the way I think we can get a handle on homelessness. And I just laid it all out. And so there's that blog up there. That's just, it's all resources for people if you start trying to think differently. And then I did a TEDx talk about thinking differently about how we support people that are in homelessness, because right now it's all nonprofits and they run out of money, or they spend the money on employing their employees. They don't have any money to help.
To actually
So
help. I do have one quick question that just
sure.
kind of jumped to my mind, because kind of the way I'm wired, I like data.
Yeah.
As best we can get. And it's
Yeah.
interesting, in a world where we've got access to so much information, we really don't have access to good data at times. I mean, we're
Yeah.
running across this right now with a pandemic, and people are assuming this may work, or there's some science that that people are, but yet it doesn't seem to be working. So the question I have for you, and I don't know if you have this data, but maybe it's a guesstimate,
Sure.
how many actual homeless do you think you interacted with, or came across, or communicated with, or did research, whatever metric you'd like to use?
Sure.
Because if I bumped into a homeless person and my world was one, and I made a judgment, like you used that term, judgment, and said, oh, this guy was whacked out on drugs, so they must all be on drugs. You, to me, seem like you've got a better indicator of that data. Tell us
Yeah.
some about the data to give credibility,
Sure.
I think.
Absolutely. So and I have funny stories about data as well.
Good.
So my data first started when I was doing original research, calling nonprofits, calling people, seeing out how I could interview for this documentary, because I wanted to make this documentary. And I kept asking questions for nonprofits, and some of them were really blunt. They said, you're thinking about this wrong. And you're looking for the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white kid homeless, because that makes the best story, right? Because that's the irony. Usually blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white kids are pretty affluent. And then that got me thinking, well, what is an affluent child? And a child is not affluent. A child's parent is affluent. You take that kid away from its parents, it has nothing. So it is poor, right? Then I was in Sacramento, and I was asking police how they counted homeless. And a guy, just 2010, maybe they've changed their metrics. Police officer told me, shopping cart equals 1 homeless, tent equals 2. And I said, sorry? Shopping cart equals 1, tent equals 2. And then I go on a homeless count here in LA 2 years ago. We're not even allowed to talk to people. We walk around and identify someone that looks like they could be homeless, like they're hanging out at a bus stop and we don't think any buses are running, or the backpack looks a little too big, or they are mentally ill and they're talking to themselves. So we tick them down, right? And we're not allowed to stop. If we see a tent, we don't approach it. We just say tent. And we actually say, I saw one person and 1 tent and 1 shopping cart, or whatever, but with no interaction, right? National Coalition for the Homeless is in DC, and it is one of the nonprofits that has been around since the 80s. It's been tried to really figure out some kind of data for people. We have to think people are filled with a whole bunch of variables. So we're not amoeba, right? It's not pure science. Like, you can't put a person in a petri dish. It doesn't work that way. There's too many variables. So they try to figure it out. And I released my book, and I had this big launch, and I was getting radio interviews, and people want statistics, because we have fed people that legitimacy equals statistics, right? You get some statistics, that equals legitimacy. So I said, well, if I believe anybody, I'm going to believe National Coalition for the Homeless. And people are constantly asking me, how many of those people out there are mentally ill and or addicted to drugs? So I called National Coalition. I said, I'm getting this question nationally. What do I do? If I had an answer, the answer is coming from you, And I'm saying it came from you
Yeah.
because you're about the best thing that I've seen that is stable and is actually trying. And I know your motivations, right? That's the other thing. Whose motivations made these statistics? Who made these statistics, and what were their motivations? Because that is also a huge part of it, right? That's part of what we're seeing with the COVID statistics. Well, where did it come from, and what's their motivation for saying that?
Yeah. Are there
So
dollars? Are there dollars associated with the
yeah,
numbers?
and there are
And
or
that's very,
reputations
yeah.
or whatever, or legitimacy, right? I was a professor. I work hard just for that title. Does that make sense? Where you're like, I need to keep that title, and you have to work hard to keep that title. So that whole idea of publish or,
Expertise. Yeah.
well,
And
and publish or
expertise. Yeah.
perish, right? As
Yeah.
an academic, you either publish or you're out. So people are constantly publishing. So back to your statistic,
Yeah.
National Coalition for the Homeless said, as best as they can tell, 1/3 of the homeless are in the United States are mentally ill and or addicted to drugs, which is right. What does that tell us? That tells us nothing. This
Sounds
is a
like a
huge
guess to me. It
slide.
actually sounds like a guess.
Well, and if anybody's going to have them, the statistics, it's going to be them. And if anybody's going
Yeah.
to try to generate the statistics, it's going to be them. But I still have people ask me, and I say, well, National Coalition says this. And they go, nah, it's more. Like, what are you, okay. Just because maybe.
But you talked to, how many do you think you interacted with, or you or your team, or that was putting it together? I
Right.
mean, do you have a
Sure.
feel for just, I mean, I'm even looking for a subset, even a small sample. I mean, if you talk to 100 people, you definitely have more expertise than me if
Right.
I just bump into one guy
Right.
on the street
Yeah.
somewhere. So,
Yeah.
I mean, do you have a guesstimate of your
So,
interactions?
well, okay. I'm going to throw it back to you. Are
Mhm.
you looking for mental illness, or are you looking for drug
Total homeless.
addiction?
Total homeless. Just a total homeless. I mean, did you
Total
talk to,
homeless?
no, the homeless numbers that you spoke with to come up with your, some of the things you did for your book, your documentary. I mean, it's kind of like if I am going to talk to NBA stars, if I don't speak to any, I can't really give perspective.
Right.
But if I interview 40 of them, I could
Yes.
give a little bit better. So, I mean, I guess I'm trying to guess how many people you interacted with that would be in the category of homeless.
That would be in the category of homeless.
Yes, yes. Does that make sense? Is that a
Well,
bad question?
because I'm looking for homeless, right? So they're all
That's right.
homeless. Does that make sense?
So everybody you interact with, so hundreds,
Eh,
thousands, or
Well, the documentary alone was, I interviewed over 100 people across the United States. So and those probably, maybe a third of them were homeless service providers. So some of them had been homeless. Some of them had never been homeless. Some of them were kind of social worker types. Some of them were entrepreneurial types. But then when I go out, for Skid Row speakers, or I go out trying to figure out, just talking to my neighborhood people, I'm always going to homeless people. I know they're homeless.
yeah.
I don't ever say, well, I take that back. I take that back because I don't just approach people and say, tell me about your life. It seems pretty rude, right? So I speak actually to a lot of panhandlers, because I figure panhandlers are like the entrepreneurs of the homeless, but they're not necessarily homeless, right? They're entrepreneurs. They figured out a way to get some income going, and that's by begging. And so I'll go up to those guys and gals, and I would say 80%, 70 to 80% of them say, yeah, I'm homeless. That's where I'm sleeping. This is my story. This is what I'm doing. Or they're a little mentally touched, and I can tell they're not doing well at all. But yeah, I don't, the way I talk to people, the way I introduce myself, or I say, this is what I'm doing. First, that they approach me. I just make myself available. And usually when I was doing the documentary, I had a camera over my shoulder, not pointed at anything. And so the people that wanted to talk to me were like, hey, what are you doing? And those are the people that I usually started a conversation with. And those were kind of the people that didn't mind panhandling, didn't mind hustling, or were just interested in life. The ones that are quiet, I've knocked on doors of vans I saw a mother going in San Francisco. I distinctly remember going to, like, seeing a mother in a stroller, and she had a large van. I thought, okay, so she's probably homeless. And I asked if I could just talk to her. She's like, get away from me. So definitely some of the rougher, chronically homeless people will have nothing to do with me, because they're over it. They're just, one of them did talk to me in Kansas City, and he said, I can do bad by myself. That's why I'm out here. So basically he'd failed at regular society and found himself not succeeding, and just went, well, at least I can fail on my own rules. I don't need to fail at someone else's rules. So yeah, I still don't quite understand your question.
No, that's good. You did. You interacted with a number of peoples, which to me establishes the credibility. One of the things that I saw somewhere, let me read this. You said that you want people to be inspired by the homeless, but you also said that is hard. And it's interesting. I do some work in ministries, and I work with a ministry that works with the elderly, those that have kind of been put in elder care facilities and left. I think statistics we hear is right around 87% of all of our elderly have pretty much been tucked away. Probably a lot of them end up in the homeless world also, if it weren't, and they would if it weren't for some of these facilities. And one of the things we discuss, because I'm a business guy, is we discuss how to promote the ministry. Well, we know that a picture, unfortunately, of someone who's elderly, first of all, we can't always use that, is never going to get the interest. And this is going to sound harsh, but I think you understand what I'm saying, of a picture of a child with a distended belly that might be in Africa. I mean, if it comes to raising money and awareness, give me the child every day to bring money in.
Marketing 101.
Yeah, my guess is you're saying something similar. Is that why you say it's hard with the homeless, or is it something else? I mean, why is it so hard to be inspired by the homeless?
Well, it's prejudgment is the big hump. Why would I get inspired by someone I view as disposable, right?
Or a failure, or we look at them as a
failure, as
talk
lesser
about
than
success
me,
here. Yeah.
As someone that's problematic, someone that's worse than I am, someone that, that's how I think we unintentionally just view them that way. And so we look to people like celebrities, or not Tim Robbins, Anthony Robbins, right?
Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Someone that's bigger and bolder and brasher and a bigger smile. And those people we get inspiration from, not the guy twitching in the corner. How can I get inspiration from the guy twitching in the corner? And what I found is when you talk to them and you let them know that they have something to offer, they come alive. And I've been trying to capture that. It's always easier to capture someone with a smile on their face, and being gregarious helps. So people are more likely to listen. But once you even say homeless, okay, well, see, I give to charity for homeless. That's where homeless is in my head. I don't get anything from the homeless. I'm annoyed by the homeless. I'm saddened by the homeless. I'm angry by the homeless. Inspired by the homeless. What, are you kidding me? Right? I mean, that's what I'm constantly trying to navigate, to figure out how I can let people know that there's a lot to learn from people that have lost everything.
Right.
There's a lot to learn.
Is there, and we only have a couple minutes here, so this is going to be tough. Is there a solution? You mentioned family, you mentioned community. You also mentioned that, they have to embrace capitalism.
Sure.
I've always been a big believer as someone who's a follower of Christ and believe that the church should have played much more of a role and not necessarily allowed the government to try, because the government obviously hasn't done, I don't think, very well at it. But are there solutions? I mean, I know you wrote a
Yeah.
manifesto, so just give us a couple
Yeah.
here that we
Sure.
need to try to redefine this somehow.
Sure. Well, okay, I'm going to talk in business terms. We
Good.
need to look at a direct return on our investment to keep us inspired to continue investing. We need to see some wins. So we need to go after another business term, our low-hanging fruit, right? There are all types of homeless people. You know what ones are really not happy with being homeless? Women and children especially, and women generally are not the I can do bad by myself people. They've been messed up in some way. So if you embrace them and give them a way out, they are usually really responsive to it. You don't get much pushback. Now, there is drug addiction, and drug addiction is a hard thing to wrangle with, and that means work. But there are people that take less effort to get off the streets. We need to get those people off the streets. We need to market the heck out of that. We need to make ourselves feel good about those wins. We need to put that in the checkbox of accomplishment to inspire us to continue on for the little higher fruit. And then the ones that are hard, that walk away from the program, we let them walk away from the program. We didn't leave them. They left the program because they still have autonomy. And that's one of the things that people get so frustrated about is people choose, I ran into more than a few people that, churches run a lot of shelters. And part of the program is going to Bible study. And for absolutely brilliant reasons, you're telling people, look, this life view, this community will help you and gives you hope and gives you stability and gives you makes you feel worthwhile. So if you buy into that religion, if you buy into that Jesus, if you buy into that Allah, if you buy into that Buddha, whatever it is, and you go with it, you run with it, you succeed. There are people that just want food and maybe they got their own Jesus, right? So they walk
food
away
and a
from
roof.
shelter.
Yeah. And truthfully, that's all that Jesus did. He gave them food. He fed them.
Yeah.
He didn't really say necessarily anything else. So
right.
That's good.
So there are people that walk away because religion is attached. But I say, let those people walk away. There are more. And you just like in business, no means next call. There's plenty more. Just keep going and looking for those wins.
Is there a group, organization, government that has to be responsible for all this, or is it the collective society that has to be responsible?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of direct action is the best action. And once you start getting a bureaucracy involved, you're getting farther and farther away from direct action. So now your efforts are paying for someone else to exist in that system. You're not helping the person directly. I always say, like, back to business, keep it simple. Like, what gives you joy when you go to Starbucks? The coffee. You go to Starbucks, you get a coffee. You see them making your thing in front of your face, and it gives you joy. And you give them money because they gave you joy, and you get immediate gratification, right? And you go back, and you go back, and you go back. And Jeff Bezos keeps sending those boxes to your houses, and it gives you joy, right? It's like Christmas every day. You're opening. So how can we do that with helping people? Because we don't do that now. We don't get, other than giving people socks and giving people food, which absolutely helps sustain them, but it helps sustain them on the street. It doesn't help get them off of the street. So what is
Yeah.
that? What is that immediate gratification? What is that return on investment that we can see, that we can build? That's part of this entrepreneurial spirit that we need to add into this, because we don't have that now. And we need that. Otherwise, we just throw our hands up. How many years do you give to a charity and the homeless dude on your corner is still there? So after year 3, you're thinking, all right, well, I haven't done anything. What am I paying for? So,
Right. Yeah.
that,
And even we'll go back to even the churches and all that. They have them right out front, but yet they're not ministering. You know, one thing that's really cool, Glenn, I love when people's demeanor and their tone kind of goes up a notch or two when they're speaking about a topic. You mentioned earlier, you're 46 years old. You obviously have been immersing yourself in this topic and business and other things, though, but you've been doing this now for 10 plus years. What does this look like? And again, we like to talk about the term redefine success quite a bit on this podcast. What does this look like in 10 years for you to say there's been success? And then maybe 20 years, I mean, 5, 10, whatever. What does success look like for you personally in this arena?
Sure. So I have enough material out there. I have enough ideas out there with all of my homeless stuff that I've done. I'm ready to put my money where my mouth is, right? If no one else is going to do it, I got to figure out how I can get myself in a place that has the resources to enable to enact some of these things, to try them and to make it public and to make it succeed or fail, or to make it like a social ninja warrior, you know, where you're rooting for the guy, but even if he fails, you know, you're still get up, do it again. That's where we need to be. And that's where I need to be in this. So I'm constantly at this point knocking on doors in my state, because my state in California, it's a mess and it's bedlam. And yeah, we have COVID and fires right now, but that just means more people homeless, because now we have the COVID economy kicking people out because they're not paying rent or their mortgages. So people are getting kicked out because they can no longer afford a place. And now their houses are burning down too. So we just have more homeless. It's just, hey, more for me to work with, you know? And so I'm constantly, I just sent emails today to my representatives, my state representatives down here to say, look, this is who I am. This is what I've done. And I'm just knocking on doors. I've been knocking on doors since the beginning of the year. Just with COVID, everyone is everything tightens up. You know, they worry about themselves. Housed people worry about themselves because no one cares about you more than you do, right? And that makes sense. So we keep going. So I think success for me personally in the next 5 years, 10 years is to really find a way to start putting these ideas in action, to see if they actually do work, and to start getting the wins, and to try to entice Jeff Bezos to figure out how to do public showers and cleaning the community, because gray water and plumbing is a very expensive endeavor, and only a superpower like Amazon can afford to clean up Skid Row in LA, right? So hopefully I have somehow figured out how to knock on Jeff Bezos's door. I kind of have already tried, and he's doing some stuff. I didn't know that I'm responsible for that, but I did send their PR people some stuff maybe about a year ago. I said, hey guys, think about this. You're about the only ones that could probably do something. And then he started doing something. I thought, oh, I did it.
Well, I don't know if he listens to our podcast. Maybe he does. I'm not sure. I haven't heard, but I know that there may be others that would want to connect with you, either get information, get books and all that. Kind of as we wrap here, last few questions, we've kind of busted over our time a little bit, but how can someone connect with you? Let's just say it's Jeff or someone like that, and they wanted to reach out to you. How can they connect with you and get, you know, access to books or, you know, your documentary? Go ahead and tell us that now. We'll put it in the notes, and then a couple quick questions as we wrap up.
If you can spell my last name, I'm very visible. So that's the key, Dunzweiler. So my website is glendunzweiler.com. You can email me at glenn@glendunzweiler.com. If you type in Glen Dunzweiler into Google search, you will see my book. You will see the movies. A lot of it's on Amazon. Thank you, Jeff Bezos. You made everything able for me to get to people. So yeah, it the stuff is out there pretty easy. I work on my, what is it called? My search engine, my SEO, my search engine optimization. So if you can spell my last name, you can find me.
Excellent. Excellent. What's next for you, Glenn?
So during COVID, because I didn't get to talk to a lot of people, my mind started working, and I just thought I need to make a podcast that is not necessarily about homeless, but it's about stuff that's social, that asking difficult questions, because I found that's what's successful for me. So in the past month or so, I've been making my own podcast called Difficult Questions with Glen Dunzweiler. And we touch on things like how COVID, how the US can succeed, how we can start winning through COVID madness, as I call it, just as, we're constantly fighting each other. The second one was, are women objects and men resources? And I dove into that because that's a really hard question. We always keep going back to that. And then this third podcast is going to be on race, where I just start tearing it down to figure out really it's race. Whenever we start talking about race, we start insulting people, and people get insulted, and why. And right now it looks like it's nuclear energy. It was made for destruction, and we're trying to make it something good. But every time we try to make it something good, it just has so much impact that's just uncontrollable. So yeah, that's my exciting project that I'm doing. And I'm always just pushing on other stuff too.
Those are some light, fluffy topics you're covering in your first.
This is, wow. I mean, I love digging into those difficult topics because I'm not a difficult person. I'm really open. I'm really easy to talk to. I'm not judgmental. I've done so much work getting away from judgments that's what I think that's my gift that people have said that I can talk to anybody, and everybody's at an equal table. And I'm just asking questions with no judgment. And if I have judgment, you can challenge me on it and we'll try to get through it, because I really just want to get to the result. So yeah, I mean, that's what I want to do. I want to build this thing where we can talk about these things and we're not into fighting, because right now we're into the fight in the US. We're so trapped into trying to fight with each other for the sake of fighting with each other, which is the opposite of the way I want to live. And so I'm really trying my best to say, but guys, no one's chasing us with a machete. No one's chasing us with a machete. Can we be kind to each other?
Not yet.
Not yet. Can we be kind to each other before that happens, please? Yeah. So, yeah.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you for that. Last question I've got for you is, we are Seek, Go, Create. That's our title. Which word there resonates with you, and why, maybe above the other two? Seek, Go, Create.
Yeah, I think that creating is something that I just always am going to do. I can't stop it. People say, what do you need to do in life? And I say, I need to, whatever it is in the back of my head that says, you have to go do this now. You have to, right? Yeah. You have to make this now. You have to try. And that's why I made the documentary. That's why I made the book. That's why I did the TEDx. That's why I'm doing that podcast is just, I love it. It somehow makes me whole. And so, yes. And I create things by seeking and going. Original research, I call it. People always, that's another thing about statistics that just bugs me. Well, have you done your research? And I say, yeah, it's called original research. It's not Google searches. I go talk to people. I don't read them in books. Books are valid, except someone wrote that book. Go talk to that author. Go to the source. The source, you cut away all of as many variables as possible, because again, humans just have so many variables and we're so many components to make a whole. So if you go to that original resource, if you go seek that source and get the juice that they have directly, maybe it's unfiltered and the best possible thing you could possibly get. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so good. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
I,
Thanks for
I
having me.
so appreciate the passion you have around a very difficult topic. I just really appreciate you taking the time to share with us. If you have enjoyed this today, and I know that you have, and please go to seekgocreate.com and join our community. It is
Sure.
simple to give us your
Absolutely.
email address, and you'll be eligible for our giveaways and never miss any content or episodes. So as a listener, you can also find us and communicate on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. All of those, we are Seek, Go, Create. As the listener, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to connecting with you on Seek, Go, Create. New episodes every Monday.